Here we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you haven't met me, my name is Anna Alden, and I'm an academic advisor in Hajim. I work with all Hajim students, but one group I work with specifically is GEAR students. So this event was originally created for GEAR students to talk more about their expedited application process to graduate programs in Hajim, and then which programs they have to select from because they're automatically accepted. But we have opened it up to any student who might be interested. So we'll cover that process for anyone who's also not in GEAR and is just a current undergrad looking into the graduate programs. Let's see, I do want to mention that I'll be monitoring the chat through the event. So if you have a question and you don't want to say it out loud, feel free to put it in there and I'll interrupt where it makes sense and we'll see if our speaker can answer it for us. Feel free to just speak up too. It's not a big group today. So if you wanted to just unmute yourself, you're free to do that. So we will be covering the graduate programs like I talked about, but first I do want to hand it over to Alyssa Clark from the Green Center, and she's going to talk a little bit about some career resources that we have for students interested in graduate programs. And then from there, we'll jump into the main part of the event. Alyssa, are you all set?
I am, yeah. We'll see if technology fails me, but I should be all set. So there should be in the chat, and let me know if any of you can't see it, but a Jamboard link. If you wouldn't mind clicking on that, you should be able to come in. You could make a Post-it note or do however you want to represent yourself. The first slide, if you could just put your first name, your class year and major, and any current interests you have in master's programs with us at the U of R. And then once you do that, you can click to the second, should be a second slide. You can click to that at the top. I'd love to know, as undergraduate students, how you utilize the Green Center, and then I can kind of take that context and apply it to how we'll continue to support you in the Green Center as master's students. And I should have prefaced this with that I'm the graduate student program director. So while you may have not worked with me yet as undergraduate students, I'm the person that's working a lot with different programming for master's and PhD level students in AS&E, but also working with specifically the engineering community, which I think obviously is probably who you're interacting with at the Green Center now if you're utilizing us. So if you wouldn't mind, does anybody have questions about Jamboard? It's probably not new. It's a new technology that I've been using, but you should be able to, on the left, there's like a little Post-it note. You can click it and then you can add whatever you want to it. If you can't, I may have done the permissions incorrectly, but I think you should be able to. Perfect. Like if you click the little, let's see, sticky note, it comes up and then you can type, right, your name, major, class year, and MS programs you're interested in. Oh, and if
so should we use sticky notes or the text that's already there?
Sticky notes works, the text works, whatever is easiest for you. I like the sticky notes because you can pick your color and stuff, you know, it's a little bit more creative, but whatever you want to use. So yeah, you can go ahead and copy, or there's like a toolbar on the left that lets you choose them too. And it looks like people are in there and working, so that's perfect. It looks like it's working. And then yeah, if you don't mind clicking over to that second slide, I'd love to know if you're using the Green Center, what you're utilizing it for. And then if not, then let me know and I can also talk to you about how you can utilize it. So great, resume outlines and tips. That may be a major thing you're doing right now for internship searches, maybe for the summer, right? Are you maybe utilizing one-on-one appointments with any of our career advisors? That could be another space that you can utilize this for. I can leave this open. People are saying this chat similar, right? Okay, you're looking for an MS, don't know what MS program yet, but you want to learn more about the grad school application process, which Michelle is our expert in. So she'll talk about that later too. Great, so keep filling this out. Definitely resume outlines and tips are a major thing that we see students for in the Green Center. Let me just really quickly share my screen here, and you should be able to That's myself. You all can see my screen without my notes? Great, I did it right. Awesome. Okay, let me just move all of your faces and little squares out of the way. So the Green Center, right, our mission is to offer personalized connections and opportunities and resources and people to design your life. So through advising, programming, courses that we offer, partnering with both the campus community and the Rochester community, we want to help students, right, develop these connections that are going to make you successful. And that's at the undergraduate level, and then that continues on as graduate support once you enter as a master's or PhD student, right? And we kind of do this by meeting 4 different learning outcomes that are iterative. So we really want you to get curious. So being curious about master's programs and the application process is one of those learning outcomes, right? So being curious about what you can do with your degree, what you can do with various degrees, and where you want to go, and how you can kind of come to some decisions as far as your graduate education. We want you to talk to people. I think that that's really key, right? Your network is everything. So 80% of jobs are filled because you have a connection and not because they're posted. So the Green Center can really help provide some of those personalized connections for you, both as an undergraduate, but then when you're doing your master's here, we'd love to get you connected, right? So upon graduation, you're ready to go, you have a job lined up, and you're happy with how your education has gone, and then, right, transitioning into your career. We want you to try stuff out. So depending on the length of your master's program, you may have room for an internship. If you're only here for a year, you may not. But you may have done an internship in your undergraduate. But ways to try things out are just to learn, right, what you do like, and I think almost just as important or more important, what you don't like. If you've tried something out and you absolutely hate it, well, then we won't find you a full-time job where the role is to do that, right? And then how to tell your story. So how to really convey who you are, what your interests are, and why you want a position or why you want an internship, and just being successful and being able to tell that narrative for yourself. One tool I wanted to highlight, and let me put the link in the chat, is our career outcomes. And they were just updated this week to have our 2020 outcomes as well. But this is a really great tool for you to look through and see. You can see where our alumni have gone with their career outcomes, and you can do it by major. And it does include graduate students. So if you're thinking you're going to master in mechanical engineering, you can see where our master students in mechanical engineering have gone, whether they've continued their education for a PhD or when they've been hired. And then if we have enough data, it'll also tell you their a salary range, right? So what they're being hired and where they're being hired within. So it can be a really great space to do some research to see if you're weighing a few options for different master's programs, where you might want to go and why. That's all I had as far as formal information, right? Because I think you all are still trying to learn more about the application process. But if you have any questions about utilizing the Career Center now or utilizing it as a master's student, I'd love to be able to answer those. And if Michelle, if you want to get started talking, I can also stay and you can shoot me messages in the chat and I can watch that too. But thank you everybody for joining, and I hope to get to know you a little bit more as master's students next year or in the next couple of years, depending on what year you are.
Thanks, Alyssa. That was super helpful.
Thanks.
So like Alyssa said, she'll stick around for a little bit. So if you have a chat that you want to send her, if you have a question about the Green Center, feel free. And then we'll transition now to Michelle Rubado from Grad Studies, and she's going to share our main event information about grad studies, the application process, and all that good stuff.
Okay, great. So I'm Michelle. I am the graduate admissions counselor for the School of Arts, Sciences, and Engineering. So I handle all of our engineering masters as well as PhD programs, which I know is of particular interest to the GEAR students. But if you guys have any other questions in this presentation too related to other schools or programs at the university, I'd be happy to help. I'm also currently a graduate student at the School of Medicine and Dentistry, so I can help in kind of like all aspects. I'm pretty well rounded. But now I'm going to share my screen. And can everybody see that? Good. Okay, perfect. All right, so everyone here is considering graduate school, obviously, but I want to ask you first a question. Who wants to go directly into their PhD? Do the raise hand emoticon thing and the reactions. If you want to go to PhD directly. Okay, we got a couple, it looks like. And then everybody else, I would assume, is interested in a master's program, which is generally what most students do, is they go into a master's before they do a PhD. And I'll be talking about both master's and PhD applications during this presentation. So there are a few key points of the application that I want everybody to be aware of. So first, we are going to start with your transcripts and your grade point average. Particularly for PhD programs, GPA is usually heavily considered. Prior research experience is the most important aspect as well for PhD applications. So making sure that you have classes that are heavily focused on research, like writing intensive, things like that, will be a huge bonus to your PhD application. Grades that are in the courses that are directly related to the graduate program are going to be important as well. When you apply for PhD programs, we usually get a wide range of applicants, people who have their master's, people coming straight out of undergraduate, and it really just depends on the candidate as a whole. So here we do holistic admissions where we do consider transcripts, GPA, outside research experience, and other things as well. But you have to know that GPA is important. So I always recommend, if you're applying directly to PhD from undergrad, to try to have your GPA above a 3.5 minimum to be considered. And then also, another important thing too is what kind of research do you want to perform in your PhD program? So who you want to do your research with and what research team do you want to be a part of is really important to consider when filling out your PhD application. You have to make sure that the programs you apply to align with your research interests, because not every school has the same research. Different schools research different topics, and if you're not a good fit, then there's a high possibility that you'll get denied. With PhD applications, fit is a really, really important thing. Now for master's programs, GPA is also considered. We usually tell our students to have above like a 3.2 GPA for master's programs. And you want to make sure that the classes that you've taken that are relevant to the master's program you're applying to, you have a relatively higher GPA in your specific major. And we do have students who come into gear who often switch majors in their master's program. So they'll go for mechanical engineering and sometimes they'll switch to like biomedical. It's not too far of a stretch, but you do need to explain why you're switching over and what coursework you think would be relevant to being able to assist you like in your personal statement. So also, we understand that coming to college sometimes is an adjustment when evaluating master's and PhD applications. So if, 5 years ago when you first started and you were a freshman and you didn't have the best grades, that's totally understandable. We're willing to work, and we're definitely, like I said, holistic admissions. So the next aspect, as I have already stated, is research experience. So research experience is so important in PhD programs. It is probably the number one thing that they're going to look for. Being able to be a part of a lab and doing any sort of like publications or presentations and actual conferences, anything like that is something that professors are going to evaluate your PhD application for. So the more you have, the better. And the more impactful research you've done is even better than that. So what I always recommend to students who want to apply for their PhD, try to become like a middle author, last author on some sort of publications that your professors might be doing. That will really strengthen your application, and that'll make you look like you're serious about doing a PhD. A lot of the times in PhD interviews, they'll ask you what kind of research experience are you bringing to the program, as well as are you interested in continuing your research or doing different research, because that's your PhD program is a lot of research. So you have to keep that in mind. It also needs to be highlighted in your personal statement. So making sure you talk about the things that you've done and what you've accomplished is really important. In the PhD programs, we tailor our personal statements more around research. So you want to make sure it's very research heavily focused and how you would fit in with the department's research. As far as master's programs go, now it's a little bit different. So for master's programs, having research experience can set your application apart, but it's definitely not required. You can also mention it in your personal statement and make sure it's on your resume in both cases, because you want to make sure that you've highlighted all of the experiences that you've done in your undergraduate career. So that leads us into the personal statement. So for PhD programs, again, we want to know about your research experience. I can't stress this enough that research is so important when it comes to PhD programs and the fit and everything. We also want you to tell us about what interests you and 3 faculty advisors that you would like to work with. Now, I recommend not going into a PhD program and just listing every single professor in the department saying how you could fit in any spot, because that's going to make you look a little wishy-washy and not really sure with what kind of research you want to perform. So that would negatively impact your application for PhDs. As well as explaining how you would be a good fit with that particular university. So when you're applying for PhD programs or master's programs, there are multiple programs that you'll probably apply to, and you want to make sure you tailor each of those personal statements to the university. So you want to look at like, what does the program accomplish there? What about that particular program interests you? Because you want it to be different. You can't just send out a generic personal statement for all of your programs. Sure, there can be some repetitive stuff like your research experience or other things, but you want to make sure that you're tailoring these personal statements, especially for PhD applications. For master's programs, it's a little bit different. So in master's programs, they're more interested in wanting to know what you want to do for a career. So it's more of a tell us a little bit more about yourself. What interested you in the university or the program? How are you a good fit for the university or program? As well as explaining like what your future career goals are. So you want to make sure that you want a master's in optics because you really want to work in optics and you want to work for the laser energy lab that's here. So you can put that in your statement and saying that that's what you want to do. Also, something to keep in mind for PhD and master's personal statements is you want to keep it between 2 to 3 pages. Any longer than that, a lot of the times professors don't read it all. So 2 to 3 pages, it can be single or double spaced. Whatever you need to get in there, just make sure you get in there. All right, so we do have a breakout activity, and I'm trying to think of how this is going to work if we're going to do breakout rooms. Basically, we're going to look at 2 personal statements, and I want you to find if there's anything wrong with these personal statements and if there's anything you would have done differently. So for this one, it's just going to be reading, and then I want you guys to unmute yourself and let me know what you would have done differently for the personal statements. So this is the first one. Can everybody read that? You just give me a thumbs up emoji or say yes in the chat.
Got a yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'll give you guys a minute. So as soon as you're done reading, feel free to unmute yourself, say some stuff about the personal statement, feel free to put it in the chat, whatever you want. So it looks like we have a chat, the last paragraph. Uncertainty. Yep. That's true. The last paragraph is really uncertain and you don't want to be saying, I think I want to do this, but I'm not really sure, but I'm going to apply anyways. When you say stuff like that, like it just makes it'll make the readers feel unsure too, as well as how you're going to do as a student. And if you're not interested and if you're going to complete the program. So something that's really important to professors is being able to complete the program and making sure they retain you as a student and that you're happy with the experience that you have there.
The second paragraph seems like it's not really relevant, and then in the third one, it's like I know the point is to sell yourself, but I feel like it's too much of an admission. Yeah, so it's not really put together the best way. Just the flow in general of this personal statement is not that great. It says like, ever since I was 7, like my parents got divorced, like that's not something the readers are really going to care about, to be honest. They want to know why you decided that you wanted to apply to this university. So the second paragraph is a little bit better because it's like, I decided that I wanted to apply, although it's still missing a lot of those key elements. Like it's a fun place to live with good music. Like that's not something they care about either.
or that there's places to go hiking. They want to know why that particular university is like of interest to you. It's important to note too that the GEAR students, you guys do have to write a personal statement for the programs that you apply to still, just to show the faculty that you're interested in everything, and so they can match you with appropriate advisors. So everybody here is going to have to do a personal statement. So is there anything else anyone noticed?
Maybe the single good point, or what could have been a good point, is describing this class project in their course with a professor. It seems like the research they're bringing up is, it gets maybe a sentence where other things that are less important are far more developed somehow.
Correct. So that was a good point that they did bring up. They should have expanded on those thoughts. They should have been like, this is the project I did, this is how I did it, and this is when I got it done, and this is what I really liked about the project. Because that kind of stuff, like I said, professors are really interested in, and they're interested in hearing. So yeah, that's a great point. So I think we covered most of the stuff from this one. So we'll go to the next one, which is a PhD personal statement. I'll give you guys a minute to read this, and then you can just do the same thing where you put your questions in the chat, or feel free to just speak up after you're done reading.
The second half of the bottom paragraph seems to give a lot of sort of like listing of stuff. Like it describes a lot of good information, but sort of lists it as just a straightforward, I do this, I do this, I do this.
Right. And when you list stuff like that, I mean, even if you do a lot of that stuff, that's great, but there's also room on your resume usually for stuff like that. So you want to make sure that your personal statement isn't just a copy of your resume, because it's really repetitive, and you want to make sure that you're expanding on things that you can't list in your resume because your resume is limited to 1 to 2 pages, and that you're expanding on like research projects that you did and personally how you were involved, not just, oh, well, I did this. That was a good point.
Someone in the chat said the talk about the research is too low level. It's describing the actions rather than the experience itself.
Yep, that is a huge thing too. You want to describe the overall experience in general, and you also want to talk about not like, okay, this is the research I was performing, but this is how I was involved with the research. So just making sure that you're putting the like what you've done is like super important. And these are actually real personal statements that we've received before, just so everybody knows. So this is something that like a lot of students tend to struggle with. The personal statement and your recommendations really are some of the most important aspects of your application process, because that's when the faculty reader or whoever's reading your application really gets to know who you are as a student and who you are as a person. For a lot of our master's programs, we don't do interviews. So this is like the only chance to really sell yourself. So making sure that you're selling yourself and making sure that you have things that make sense, making sure that you have professors who read over your personal statement too is really important. The Green Center too, I think helps with personal statements. I'm sure they're more than willing to help with that, as well as resumes and things like that, especially academic resumes, because academic resumes are a little different than work resumes, because you want to make sure you're listing like your publications, your posters, your classes that might be relevant and things like that. So yeah, great job on identifying a bunch of stuff in these personal statements, everyone. Obviously, these were both terrible examples. And I didn't really want to give a good example just because like the terrible examples are easier to kind of like pick apart almost. And there are parts that are good considering how bad they are. So, yeah. So next we have the resume and CV. So in your resume, you always want to make sure you include your projects, research experience, and work experience. And like I said previously, resume and CV help. You can always find it at the Green Center. You can work with Alyssa Clark too for master's and PhD specific stuff. She helps a lot of students tailor their resumes for after they graduate, but she also helps undergraduate students for applying for our programs. Typically on a resume, we list the education first because that's the most important thing when applying for a program or degree. And then after that, you would list maybe relevant coursework, poster presentations you might have done, even if that's undergraduate symposiums at the university, those are really important. So making sure you list those, any sort of national conferences you might have gone to, publications, if you have any, those are great. Even if you're like a 5th, 6th, 7th author, that's still important. So as far as MS programs go to any other like relevant experience, maybe even work experience that you have that might be relevant in the field. So like a research assistant, I know some undergraduates have those positions, even a TA position that you might have had for a course that you took in the past, that is also really important to list. So next, the application recommendation letters. So for the PhD programs, now these are the same as master's programs. Like for recommendation letters, they can be the same. They usually don't vary too much. But for PhD programs specifically, you do want to use academic professors. And you want to make sure that you're using professors who you like know on a longer term scale. So someone you might have had for 1 to 2 classes, or you've known for maybe a couple of years. You don't want to just get Joe Schmo, the professor who you took one class with, who doesn't really know who you are as a student. You can ask him and he can say yes, but that recommendation probably won't be as strong as like your advisor or someone you're working with on a daily basis. So making sure you're accurately picking your recommendation letters is huge, because recommendation letters and personal statement, like I said before, can really make or break an application. So making sure you're really close to them is really important. All right, so now we're gonna use the breakout rooms. So I'm gonna have Anna send you guys out to some breakout rooms, and I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them about 3 people in the breakout rooms who you could ask for a reference, as well as strengths and weaknesses that each of those professors might provide for you. So, and making sure your recommenders are diverse, so maybe from multiple different classes and things like that. But yeah, I'll leave that to you, Anna.
All right, let's go for it. I'm going to do 3 rooms. There should be around 3, maybe 4 in one group. Okay, here we go.
Are we listing like types of people or specific people?
Specific people that you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
You can just end them and then everyone will just be popped back in here.
Here they come. It's like room 1 is having a good conversation. All right, I think that's everyone.
Okay, perfect. I thought we had 13. Oh, maybe 12.
Oh, yeah, I think Alyssa might have been 13.
Okay. Okay, great. So I hope that activity was beneficial to everyone and that you guys were able to list some of your recommenders and you have them in the back of your head. I don't know if you guys are juniors or seniors or if you're freshmen, sophomores. If you're a freshman, sophomore, I recommend now trying to like form those connections and stuff like that. If you haven't found anyone yet who you really think could be a great recommender for you, making sure, you know, you're meeting with them, telling them how your work's been going and stuff like that. It's really important. As well as for juniors, seniors, you guys by now should have at least 2 to 3 people who you can use as references. And if not, you still have some time probably to form some meaningful relationships or reach back out to professors who you really liked, who you thought would be good, and kind of like build a rapport with them. So that way they can write a recommendation letter for you. And okay. Okay, perfect. So interview. As I said before, master's programs don't usually do interviews. Some of them do. So there are some professional programs that will do interviews and they'll want to get to know you a little bit better. So with master's program interviews, you want to make sure you check the program website to see if this is a requirement. And one of our programs actually in particular that does is the team program sometimes conducts interviews, and this is on a case-by-case basis and for scholarship awards as well. So something to note with master's programs at the University of Rochester, we offer up to a 50% tuition scholarship for any student who applies. It's just a part of your application process. You don't need to do a separate scholarship application or anything like that. Your application is evaluated based on merit. So it just depends on how well you've done in the past and how competitive of a student we think you are. And we give up to 50%. Sometimes we give greater than 50% in special cases. And if the student reaches out to us and expresses like a lot of financial need, there are times that we work with students and things like that for our master's program. So we're more than happy to work with students and getting money, because I know that's a really big thing. And you definitely don't want to go broke going to school. So also for PhD programs, usually they do an interview. I have not come across a PhD program where they don't really do interviews. Most of our PhD programs have an interview week or weekend where they will fly you out to campus in non-COVID times. You'll meet with multiple faculty and staff. You'll also meet with current graduate students, as well as other people who you can kind of like talk with, get to know the department a little bit better, and see if you could be a good fit in their school. Now with COVID, everything's kind of been over Zoom and everything like that. I'm sure in the future it'll go back to regular, like flying out and everything like that. And that's all paid for by the schools. Usually they fly out their PhD candidates who they're really interested in. And most of these requirements can also be found by going to the program website. Reaching out to faculty members too prior to a PhD application is really important. So making sure you're having those informal interviews with them before you even apply to the program is super, super important. So reaching out to a professor you might be interested in working with him or her, asking about their research, asking about, where they think their research is going, what capacity do they have for PhD students in the future. So seeing if they have any spots for graduate students available is really important. A lot of PhD students are funded through grants. So if the professor has grant spots, then they'll more than likely be able to accept you as a PhD student, and that's how you get paid. So our PhD programs at the University of Rochester are fully funded. So it's 100% tuition waiver plus a stipend, as well as in some cases, they will cover your health insurance. Some programs do, some programs don't, just depends on what program you go into. And that's pretty common across a lot of the PhD programs at R1 research institutions like the U of R. So just have to keep that in mind. Not all PhD programs do interviews as well. Most of them do, but a lot of them do not too. So just always making sure you're aware of the requirements, and talking to faculty beforehand can really give you a better idea of how the admissions process might go. So next is funding, which I have said previously. All the PhD programs in art sciences and engineering are fully funded. The PhD programs at the School of Medicine and Dentistry are also fully funded, as well as some programs, I believe, at Warner might have some sort of additional funding. I'm not 100% certain. The Simon School of Business, I don't really know too much about them, but I'd be happy to get you in contact if you're interested in any of the business-related master's or PhD programs that they have. Additional awards are also available to exemplary applicants. So if you are an outstanding applicant, we will give you additional funding on top of your assistantship stipend. So you'll get it in the form of an assistantship. That's pretty common for any student that's admitted, as well as an additional fellowship. So, and PhD students are paid a taxable stipend for their research, and they usually pay that back in the form of a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship. So you usually be assigned that. When you are admitted to the program, they'll tell you you have TA responsibilities or you have RA responsibilities. So, and obviously those vary from department. TAs typically help co-teach a lot of undergraduate classes, whereas RAs work on the grant-funded projects and things like that. So master's programs too, those are merit-based scholarships, which are awarded by the admissions committee. Some additional fellowships are available as well. You can look at our website. We have a full list of the fellowships under, it literally says fellowships. And students are also eligible to fill out for FAFSA, although a lot of the federal aid, unfortunately, is not distributed to master's students, but the financial aid office is more than willing to help you get out additional loans or anything like that if you need it. So here are the programs that we have in my department in Art Sciences and Engineering. So PhD only, we have brain and cognitive science, chemistry, psychology, economics, math, so on and so forth. We also have MA master's only options as well as both. So there are options where you can, if you're not accepted to the PhD program, you can go into the master's program. So, yep. So does anyone have any questions? Related to like applying or the application or how committees review stuff, I'd be more than willing to answer anything that you guys have. Pull up the chat. Is double majors a strength? Double majors it's not going to make you lack focus in your field. So it just depends on kind of what you're going for and everything like that. If you, let's say you double majored in, this is hypothetical, biomedical engineering and mechanical engineering, because you wanted to take an interest in both. So you got the two different degrees, but then when you went into your master's program, you wanted to solely focus on biomedical engineering, that would be totally fine. You can say, I have experience with these courses, and this is how my mechanical engineering degree has also boosted my biomedical engineering interests. So just making sure that you're making it relevant to the program you're applying to. So you can kind of like twist it in any single way that you want. You just got to make sure that it supports the research that that program is doing, especially for PhD applications. Master's applications, it's not as important.
I'd say just from the advising side, if you are considering a double major, also make sure you remember Michelle's comments about GPA and things like that. So if you're saying, you know, I really want to go into computer science, but I also want to add business, but I know I'm only going to do graduate school in computer science. If you end up struggling with computer science or you know, your second major, it might be a really good idea for your application to drop the second major because they really want to see a focus on what you plan to study later. And then that GPA is really important too. So if that's going to help you keep it up, that would be good.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually majored in Spanish and French, and she's going for her Spanish master's. And just because she majored in both doesn't mean it makes her lack focus. It just means she has interest in both. And then she wanted to elevate her experience in Spanish. So just making sure you make a note of it in your personal statement, I think is important. Okay, so next question is how to reach out to the advisors who you want to work with. So basically just sending an email. A lot of the times professors probably won't get back to you. I'm going to be honest. There's like a 50-50 chance that they're going to email you back. But making sure that you have a well-formulated email before you send it to the advisors that you want to work with is really important. So if you want to talk to a professor in biomedical engineering, let's say, apparently I'm using that in all my examples today, you reach out, you can't just reach out and be like, hey, can you tell me about your research? Because they probably won't respond. But if you say, hey, I saw that you're working on this publication right now and you have grant funding for this, can you tell me a little bit more about what grant funding opportunities are available to graduate students and what your courses are focused on that you teach in a graduate program? So making sure you're really tailoring it. Professors love to talk about themselves, and you need to make sure that you're kind of like appeasing to like the research that they've done and showing that you know what they've done and that you're really interested in furthering what they've done and being like, I would love to be a support for that, or how do I help you, or can I volunteer with anything now to get you to know you a little better? Anything like that, an email will really, really help. So yes, so reading abstracts from papers that professors have published and bringing them up is a huge thing, because they'll be like, oh my gosh, you actually like read or took the time out of your day to read my publications. That's really, really important. So I recommend doing that as well. Sometimes you will do all that though, and they still won't respond. And there's really nothing that you can do. Like you can try to email them again if you want, but professors are really busy most of the time. So it's nothing against you personally. It's just that they don't think they have the time to talk to you. So certain professors will reach back out to you, certain professors won't. It's just up to you, but it's always good to send out those emails. Even reaching out maybe to their secretary sometimes. They have secretaries listed on the website. That might be an easier way to get a hold of them because then you're going through someone else. So yeah, those are just comments for that.
I'd echo what Michelle said too with undergrad research. So if you're someone who's thinking about getting research experience for an application for a program, you can also email current faculty members here or somewhere else if you want to go to do research over the summer somewhere, reading their abstracts, having an idea of what they've done research on and what they're working on, and including that in your email can be really helpful.
Yeah, I believe as engineering students too, you have the opportunity to do a summer research experience through the REU, the education undergraduate experience or research experience for undergraduates or something like that.
If you have time, Google REU.
Yeah, Google REU. I can't go into total specifics, but if you email, I think her name is Chris Condello. She is in charge of the REUs at the University of Rochester, and she could probably help you with the application process. She's in the Kern Center. So if you look up Kern Center, that's where she's listed under and everything. That kind of stuff will really strengthen your application. Also, as Anna was saying too, like faculty members here do have a lot of connections. So if there's a program you're interested in and it's similar to research that you've done with a current faculty member, you can ask them like, hey, do you know this person? Because then if they introduce you that way, there's a lot higher chance that they're going to get back to you. So, yeah. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute too if you want.
Yeah. Do master's programs usually prefer students who have done that same subject for their undergrad?
So master's is a little bit different than PhD. It's a little less intensively focused. So as I said before, we've had people who switched from mechanical engineering to like biomedical engineering, and they've been accepted to the programs, but you just have to make sure that you put in your personal statement why you're switching and like what you think is going to benefit you out of the switch. You can't just be like, oh, I just think it's cool and I want to do that instead. You got to be like, I've done this research and this has led me to do this, which is in this field. And that's why I want to do this. Or I worked an internship at a biopharmaceutical company and that was so cool doing like biomedical engineering instead of mechanical engineering and stuff like that. So just making sure that you have a point of like why you're switching. Talking to the graduate program coordinators too for master's programs is really important. So these are usually, they're kind of like the first step in master programs. Here we have a graduate program coordinator for every program that we have. If you reach out to them first and say, hey, like, what should I do? Is there a professor I should talk to maybe? They can definitely help you get connections as well. So, but it's not common, but it does happen. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And then if anyone wants to, feel free to email me with any additional questions if they come up later. Let's see.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, of course. So if you guys have any other questions or need like application fees waived or anything like that too, feel free to email me. If you want to apply for programs here at U of R, I can waive your application fee. So that's like totally fine.
Not bribery.
A little bit of bribery.
Thank you, Michelle. So this is the end of the event that we have today, but feel free to reach out to Michelle if you have more questions or if you would rather sit down one-on-one and talk about some specifics of your interests or any questions that you have. Feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm going to put my email in the chat. So I'm an academic advisor in Hajim if you weren't here for the beginning, and I help students through pretty much anything that comes up during undergrad. So if you have come into an issue this semester and you're worried, my GPA might be affected for my future application, something like that, feel free to come talk to me and we can figure out a good solution for you while you're still in undergrad. But that's pretty much it. So we've left our contact and feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. Thanks, everyone.